My father-in-law is lying about his occupation, and we all know it.
Liar, liar, pants on fire.
He's running around. All right, a few years ago, my 30 male wife, 33 female, reconnected with her estranged father, 66 male, who was described as a con man and a compulsive liar. It had apparently surfaced that the reason behind all of this supposed lying was that he was working undercover with the U.S. Marshal Service the entire time and wasn't able to tell his family for operational security reasons.
That's crazy.
He literally watched the movie U.S. Marshals with Tommy Lee Jones, and that was it.
Yeah, he's like, done. I got it.
He's like, that's me. That's actually my life. I'm committing to that. Every job he had had and got fired from, and every sham marriage he'd had after his divorce from my wife's mom was suddenly explained away as being part of his cover. By the way, this comes from user Throwaway Fake Cop, and if you want to submit your own stories, go to the r/OKStorytime subreddit. So, naturally, I was immediately suspicious, as claiming to be a spy is a textbook strategy for compulsive liars to conveniently have a blanket excuse for everything. But he supposedly had proof that he showed my wife, mainly U.S. Marshal memorabilia, medals, badges, stories, etc., and he seemed to be having a positive effect on my wife. So I didn't want to look like a crazy person looking to cause trouble for no reason, and let it be. Literally, you're so right, though.
Yeah.
It's the fakest thing ever. I'm a spy, actually. No, you just don't understand. That was all for my cover. Over time, he started doing the overprotective dad act and started getting threatening and critical towards me, to the point that he started making vague threats to use his standing with the U.S. Marshals against me. The kind of stuff that isn't explicit, but heavily implied that he could get me brought up on trumped-up charges, get unwanted police attention brought on me to psych me out, etc., etc. Usually this wouldn't faze me, but given the recent climate with Trump being a legal immigrant, it has me seriously worried that I could get deported for so much as an incorrect lane change. This also made me start getting suspicious because certain things didn't add up, and a lot of these came out when his wife suddenly divorced him out of nowhere. He was in the process of setting up a drone production company, more on this later, and claimed that the U.S. Marshals were paying him with surplus drones rather than a salary.
What?
Yeah, okay, sure. I have no experience with the government sector, but it seems ludicrous to me, and like it'd be a huge mess of red tape to pay someone with material items rather than a salary like everyone else.
Yeah, what?
I am also not too familiar with that, but I'm going to go ahead and say you're right about that, OP.
I would too.
He said he had pictures of a harmful act he endured while supposedly serving a warrant on a fugitive who hit him with a 2x4. He had an illustrious history to go with it, but there wasn't any mention of receiving any compensation or health care, paid time off, anything you hear about an officer usually getting when injured in the line of duty. He repeatedly borrowed thousands of dollars for us to pay for experimental surgery that the government nor his insurance would pay for. After the divorce, his wife had no idea what we were talking about, leading us to believe the money actually went towards the drones mentioned earlier. He also showed us some of the pew-pews in his collection, which he said were loaned to him by the U.S. Marshal Service. This guy is wild. I vaguely used to have an interest in the pew-pews, so I was familiar with some of them. But what he said didn't seem to add up. He showed a Mossberg 500, which seemed legit enough, but when he brought out the AR-15 variant, which looked like a regular M4 to me, but instead, he insisted it was a special variant called an M6.
Ooh.
I've never heard of an M6 in my life, but again, I'm not an expert. That's literally from Call of Duty. After his wife divorced him, he has literally no income except for his Social Security. He's moved into a tiny shack of an apartment that he can't afford and is constantly begging for money from everyone. Maybe I'm naive, but surely someone who's presumably served in the U.S. Marshals for as long as he has, which is at least over 20 years, would have some kind of pension or support or something. His undercover stories also don't add up. He was the manager for a county, but was exposed for lying about having certain degrees, but that was supposedly an undercover mission, and an expose was a cover to get him out safely. Afterwards, he injured his back because he got into a wreck driving a truck while on meds for a trucking company, and spent years recovering from a broken back while penniless. That was also supposedly undercover, but he had no explanation as to why they didn't help him after supposedly getting disabled while in the line of duty. He had a sham marriage after that lasted a few months. Again, supposedly he was undercover because the lady worked for Boeing and he was meant to investigate them. I'm worried about this guy. We gotta do a wellness check.
Yeah.
Father-in-law is rapidly falling down a rabbit hole of delusion. Everyone needs like some level of delusion or make believe to make, give the life a little jouissance, a little spice here
Maybe a
and
little
there.
interesting.
But that's like an inside thing. You're like, you're just like driving your trucking job and you're like, I'm working for the U.S. Marshals right now,
I'm
man.
undercover.
And that's like, and that makes your life a little cooler, maybe a little bit for a second. But like,
have fun with it.
Yeah, exactly. It should be fun. This isn't fun anymore.
No.
This is becoming concerning.
Yes.
Like, instead of like, what's he doing? It's like, he needs help.
Yeah.
Clearly.
Yep.
But let's continue. His history is full of jobs and firing and marriages like this. We're only aware of 4 marriages, but there may be as many as 6. His most recent wife divorced him because she found out he was lying about the drone business and taking money from her to fund it. The more I type these, the more ridiculous they sound.
Yeah.
At this point, I am 90% sure he's lying or stretching the truth. Maybe he went for a ride-along a few times or was made a special deputy temporarily or was even contracted as a civilian to help them, but I'm almost certain that he's being a phony. It's just impossible to confront him about it because he either gets threatening or will tell the most elaborate, meandering stories. My wife has since cut him out, so there's no real stakes other than us wanting closure about whether he's lying for sure or not. Is there an official channel I can go through to verify his claims? And if not, are there any surefire, telltale ways I'm able to know whether he's lying? And there are some comments. I will say that I think his theory that like maybe there was like one thing that happened where he worked alongside the U.S. Marshal. Like he was never, he was just like involved in it tangentially. Like, and then he just grabbed onto it and made it his whole identity.
This really does feel like you're talking to a child. Like you're talking to a child who was like, some firefighter was like, all right, or a policeman like went to their school and was like, okay, between you and me, I'm going to give you this very special badge.
Right.
This means that you can get into any room in the whole town.
Yeah, they give you the plastic badge and it's like you're
star.
now an FBI agent.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And then they're just like, oh yeah, all right,
mommy, daddy, I work for the FBI now.
And they have to keep it like really quiet, and they're taking it really seriously, but also want people to know how cool they are. They're like, I'm a spy. It's pretty cool, but you can't know anything about it. You just have to give me money for undercover reasons. From everything that we're hearing, it feels like these are all reasons to believe that it's all fake. I don't know.
Yes, especially, dude, it's fake because he's not getting medical help.
Yeah.
He's disabled from a car accident, and he's not part of, I mean, I know there's not a great track record of, like the VA and the government, like helping people get that stuff as fast as possible. But regardless, we got comments. Let's see what the comments have to say.
Let's see.
Oh, boy. Comment number 1 says, he claimed that the U.S. Marshals were paying him with surplus drones rather than a salary. Nope. That would never happen. That is not how the federal government operates. He showed me some of his pew-pews in his collection. He said he was loaned by the U.S. Marshal Service. No, the Marshals don't loan out weapons like they're garden tools. Surely someone who served as long as he has in the U.S. Marshals would have some kind of pension or support or something. Yes, you would be right. And it would not be an insignificant sum either. This is all BS. It is sort of fascinating, though, to be so committed to such an elaborate lie.
Yeah.
It's fascinating, but also sad to go through life like that. And there's an edit to add. Someone DM'd me about the pew-pews being loaned, and I am here to tell you it would not happen. Every weapon, holster, bulletproof vest, clip, right down to a box of bullets. Everything is cataloged, accounted for, and is either assigned or checked out or in. And these records are audited on a regular basis. If anything went missing, especially a firearm, somebody is going to be in a world of hurt. The legal term of art would be felony. That
makes sense.
That does make sense because I recently read something. Someone said that the U.S. military isn't even like it's a logistics company that like also does war. But they're literally just about, it's all logistics from the top down.
Yeah. Well, makes sense.
So every bullet, it is all cataloged. Like they're not just giving this stuff away. On loan.
Sure.
Comment 2 says, you repeatedly let him borrow thousands of dollars? He's a piece of crap and scamming you. You need to warn your wife. OP says, I'll be honest, he played us like a fiddle there. We were having marital problems at the time, so I'd have looked like the bad guy for saying no to this experimental life-saving surgery. He would literally talk our ears off for hours about all the details about these surgeries, and my wife still trusted him at the time, so she gave him the benefit of the doubt. Yeah, and it's like, this is your wife's dad.
Yeah.
Being like, I need money for experimental surgeries. It's like, if you're just like, no way.
Right.
Yeah, it's going to be. And your wife is like, what? Like,
yeah, and you're already having problems. It's like, might get you a little closer to divorce if you play your cards wrong.
Yeah, that was definitely the path of least resistance.
Yeah.
I think that was the right move.
Yeah.
He asked to borrow the money under the pretense that he had money on the way from the U.S. Marshals and he'd be able to pay us back in a matter of weeks. He just didn't want to worry his wife, which conveniently gave him the pretense to make us not ask her any questions. Finding out this was a lie was one of the catalysts behind my wife cutting him out. We aren't rich by any means and could have desperately used that money during the vid, and only did it because he convinced us it was a matter of life and death and he'd pay us back. When confronted about it, he told my wife to her face, I wouldn't have asked for that amount of money if I could have paid it back that soon. Comment number 3 says, U.S. Marshal Service has a mandatory retirement age of 57. If he is retired, he would have check stubs, even if direct deposited. You can retire as early as 50 as long as you have 25 years or at 57 with 20 years. LWRC makes a model based off of the AR platforms they call an M6. He's full of crap. OP says, whenever questioned about this, he said he was contracted by them, and that's why they were able to pay him with drones. We need to find you some friends. We need to find you a hobby. We need to get you into a club of some kind.
We gotta get you into like a LARPing group or something.
Yeah, or like
go play pretend.
Anytime he needed reasoning for anything, it was, I'm a contractor for the U.S. Marshals. But my understanding is that could mean anything. You could be contracted to be a janitor cleaning their toilets, and you could say you're contracted by the U.S. Marshals. That doesn't mean you have any authority with them. A cursory check of Wikipedia says, okay, this is just more, okay, blah, blah, blah. Comment number 4, sometimes I envy pathological liars. It must be so fun to just dive into your imagination and make stuff up all the time.
Honestly.
He should really channel it into being a show writer for one of those bad cable FBI shows. I guess if you cared that much, you could run a background check on him. He's going to continue to lie regardless and say that's just his cover story, but it might give you and your wife some peace of mind. OP says, what are some resources I could use for that? I'm considering hiring a private investigator when we have the disposable income, but I was scared he would find out when we hired him. I suppose that no longer applies now. There's an edit. My wife did a few cursory background checks for like $20, but the problem is he uses a million variations of his name, and all that came up was multiple bankruptcies.
Well,
it may look like he's bankrupt, but he's actually getting that sweet, sweet drone money from the U.S. Marshals.
Exactly.
Because it's not liquid assets, it doesn't get taxed. So really, he's playing the long con.
Yep.
She's also saying that he committed check fraud in his ex-wife's names, so it couldn't be traced back to him, which was the reason behind many of his divorces. We get a call right now from the U.S. Marshals, and they're just like, you need to stop talking about this.
You gotta quit it. You gotta quit it.
You're in dangerous waters. We'll pay you in drones if you stop talking about this. We are going to attend Thanksgiving with him next week, and I'm going to ask him a few carefully crafted questions that I got from this thread. I'm also going to get in contact with the U.S. Marshals proper and make an inquiry.
What?
Dude!
How can you do that?
Stop
Is that
wasting
possible?
It's a waste of time. I think it just needs to be like I'm not going to call the U.S. Marshals. I'm going to call the doctor. Like my father-in-law has such incredibly deep-seated delusions that I worry for him.
Yes.
This is a man who owns firearms.
Yeah, that honestly, great point.
Should not have those.
Delusional man with very dangerous military weapons.
Yes.
Actually, is it military grade?
I'm sure.
Well, it's
Mossberg,
M6.
those are like, that will put a large cavern in somebody.
Really?
That was not there before.
Oh, great. Great. Perfect person to have.
So yeah, I'm worried. I'm worried about him. I'm going to try and document what happens and report back to this thread. It's just very difficult because he talks for hours and hours and hours with pointless anecdotes, so it's hard to parse actual usable information and not space out, which I suspect is a strategy he relies on. All right, update number 2. Here we go. Sorry I didn't update, but it's not very exciting. We attended Thanksgiving, but it was uneventful because kids were constantly running around distracting everyone, and there wasn't really a moment that allowed us to confront him that wouldn't have been forced or awkward. Father-in-law arrived and wasted no time acting pitiful and like he was passing away, shuffling around, hunched over, pretending to fall over, and hovering in the kitchen and getting in everyone's way while showing them videos of ducks he took at the pond. The implication was clearly that he was so lonely that ducks were his only company now, and it was our fault. Are we sure this guy's not just, like, really in need of help?
He absolutely is.
Okay, I think he knew something was up because he didn't say a single word to either of us the whole night. And by the way, you can listen to every single word we've ever said in our lives by listening to full episodes with stories like this on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, on iHeartRadio, wherever you listen to podcasts. Just search OK Storytime, and you've got the whole world in the palm of your hands. There's a little bit of story left. But honestly, like, what? I mean, if this is your, like, father-in-law or your relative, like, what are you doing here?
I think it would just be the kind of thing where it's just like, okay, Grandpa, you know. Oh, wow, you're undercover, really? Okay, I'll be very quiet. I won't tell anyone. How I talk to children as well. Yeah. You know, you just, the same kind of thing.
It's one of those things where if you let it get at you and you're like, he's just lying. But it's like, if you just let that go and be like, yeah, dude, Grandpa's lying about being in the U.S. Marshals again.
Yeah.
It just becomes funny.
Great stories to tell.
But again, it's like also I'm shocked at the lack of any concern whatsoever that he's just so delusional that he's playing into this lie this hard. Because there's a difference between you're driving your truck and you're like, I'm in the U.S. Marshals. Right. And like, monologuing for 3 hours about being in the U.S. Marshals.
Yeah. Like, no, I would expect that people are probably just angry at the amount of money that has been scammed by, like, you know, from them to this guy, and they're probably just like, no more sympathy anymore. You just have to be punished for this. You cannot. I can't even just play along with it anymore because this is like crappy what you're doing.
Well, let's finish this story. Towards the end of the night, as we were getting ready to leave, sister-in-law was close to having a breakdown from the stress, and they started making it clear that they wanted him to leave too. We loudly offered to take him with us to try and prompt him, to which he decided he had to start carving the already pre-sliced ham as a flimsy pretense to force himself to stay.
Gosh, so sad.
We all literally just stood there in the kitchen while he slowly, agonizingly carved this ham that didn't need to be carved. We didn't want to be rude and yell at him, so we finally just left. And it turned out he stayed there for another hour or so, leaving at 11 p.m.
Oh my God.
So that's really it. We're 99.99% sure he's a liar. I may call the U.S. Marshals proper just to verify and get receipts, but it seems like a foregone conclusion at this point. Otherwise, we've totally cut him off, and the effort of trying to get any more information from him isn't worth the stress of allowing him in our lives. And that is the end of that story.
Yeah, at the end of the day, there's nothing you can do. Just don't give him money. That's all you can do. This poor grandpa. This poor man. This poor father-in-law.
I don't know who I'm like more like kind of mystified by, like the grandpa who really thinks, or like I guess the father-in-law who really thinks that he can get away with the U.S. Marshal lie, or that OP is like still a little unsure, like maybe I'll call the U.S. Marshals. Like, you already know.
Yeah.
You should have already known.
Trust yourself, man. You are correct in this situation.
So there's no need to go, ha, gotcha.
Yeah.
It's like hey, Dad, have you had a brain scan recently? Or like, do you want to maybe get a CT?
Yeah.
Just to make sure there's nothing, festering in your brain or anything? Like,
my mother-in-law is upset that we didn't tell her the baby's name first.
Hey, I called dibs on knowing that.
My partner and I just recently welcomed our third baby. Congratulations. All of my births have been scheduled for induction or a planned C-section, so each birth was on the day and our babies entered the world calmly. I always felt blessed for that. By the way, this comes from Juju Cat Hulu, and if you want to submit your own stories, go to the r/OK Storytime subreddit. So, this one arrived 4 weeks early with my water breaking, so we were taken by the wind with her arrival. Previous to this, with the global pandemic, work has been absolutely insane, and I was easily giving 50 or more hour work weeks. The house got away from both my partner and I. With each baby, I have a ritual of deep cleaning. Every piece of laundry done. Everything is in order. Given the surprise entrance of our daughter, everything was the opposite. And I had to literally do laundry to even finish my hospital bag. And I had to leave for the hospital before anything was finished. So, just to set the scene, everything felt chaotic, and literally 3 hours after arriving to the hospital, I was in surgery for delivery. Wow, moving fast. We still had no name for our baby. Before they took me back, we began calling family to let them know what was happening. We called my partner's mom twice, waiting 20 minutes between each phone call. It came down to the minute, and as they were taking me back, she returned our call, but we sent her a text letting her know what was happening. She asked to be updated, and absolutely, that was no issue. When she was born, 6:38 p.m., pictures and stats were sent, and we confessed that we still didn't have a name. She replied her congratulations, and all was well. Famous last words. We finally got back into our room, and were obviously up into early hours. As we went back and forth, we chose a name. Exhausted, I updated a Facebook post with her name, and went to sleep not thinking much of it. Mind you, I was so tired, I didn't even update my own mother. I knew I could call her the next day and it wouldn't be an issue. Or so we thought.
Oh, think again.
The next morning, my partner got the following message. I find it sad that on such a momentous event, the birth of your daughter, you can't notify me with her name once you both decided on one. I'm only her grandmother. I can't understand what I ever did wrong that you fail to, in some small way, connect with me ever so often. Gee, I'm only your mother. Ironic when, from the past, hearing raves of what a wonderful son I raised. He's a special young man. We just love him, blah, blah, blah. Who am I again? Oh, just a woman who gave birth to a boy almost 36 years ago. I wasn't perfect as your mother, a parent. You'll discover you aren't either. There was much I gave up to raise a family, and I wouldn't change it for the world.
Oh my God.
Even homeschooling because it became necessary. Even when you refused to leave the vehicle for 7th grade. I laugh at the irony
Dude, she's
now.
bringing up 7th grade?
This is crazy.
What?
You never wanting to do the work and then desperately wanting to be homeschooled. Here's the thing. I never neglected to keep in touch with my folks, even when obligations faced. I helped as the need arose. All I know is I stay connected. My prayers will always be with my grandchildren, and that someday, as they grow older, they experience the greatest miracle of all. Probably not by their parents, but with hope and prayer, a cousin, an aunt, or an uncle. Again, congratulations on the birth of Hannah Marie to her siblings. Be well. I love you.
Is she gone?
That was like a perfectly written monologue for someone. That was so insanely dramatic and well thought out, though.
That is truly the Shakespeare of insane post-birth messages to get from your mom.
It was crazy.
Like,
who am I? Just your mother.
I wish I could
insane.
stand in front of her while she was saying all this, and I would just go, boring.
Yeah. As I watched my partner read this, I could tell he was upset by it. It's not something you want to get after not even 24 hours after the birth of your child. When I read it, I was instantly angry. The most upsetting part of her behavior was towards the end. She is extremely religious, so when she went on about our children experiencing the miracle, she was talking about God. Probably not by their parents, she said, in quotes. Uh-oh. I'd like to mention, while we are not married and we don't worship in the same calculated and devoted way she does, she basically called us religious failures to not only our existing children, but the one who has not been on this earth one full rotation. But, hopefully someone will save them and teach them how to get to heaven, because to her, their souls were screwed. Marriage is something we plan on down the line, and quite frankly, it's no one's rightful business. So for the first time in 10 years I've known her, I spoke up. Mind all of you, I've always respected her, and while I don't understand her one bit, I've never held it against her. She is who she is, and she gave me my partner, so for that, I will always love her. But my respect for her plummeted, and I replied with this with my partner's read through and permission. He said he didn't know how to reply, and with his blessing, I sent it. Hi.
Oh, here we go.
So, I understand you expressed some feelings towards Ryan and I just wanted to reach out. Truthfully, I am upset by your timing and am confused by where you felt wronged in the chaos of me going into labor and getting Hannah's name out to you. It seems you were upset by the fact that we did not update you in the way that you wanted to be updated, and I'm sorry if you felt it was intentional or we were trying to push you away somehow. To be quite honest, my water broke and suddenly I was having surgery with a half-packed hospital bag at home still. I did ask Ryan when we were waiting for me to go back for surgery if he got a hold of you, and both calls were missed when we tried to call. He did, however, let me know that you were texting with him. Pictures and post-birth stats were provided. We have been occupied with Hannah's care since, as she is considered premature, so we haven't had the time to stop and contact everyone individually as frequently as we had wished this time around. In fact, we didn't even have a name ourselves, as each nurse asked what to write on her little name card throughout the evening. We apologize that giving you her name right away was overlooked. This baby entered the world in a bit of a chaos, and we seem to have failed the expectation we should update you by a certain time. I added her name to my Facebook post to get a mass announcement out. This wasn't done with any intention to upset anyone. I'm not aware of anyone else being upset by this, but maybe it brought up disappointment in other places for you, as you've now shared. Particularly how we have decided to raise our children and their relationship with religion. It was stressful to be called not enough in a time where we are welcoming a new life into this world. Right now, I'm going through a hard time with breastfeeding our premature baby who is losing weight, as it's a bit of a rougher start for her than my first two. This feedback by you is unwelcome. We are preoccupied as new parents, and Ryan is an understanding partner, guiding and supporting both of us. I am amazed by him all over again. It was left field to be somewhat taunted about how hopefully my children will be saved by a relative, as if they have somehow been failed already. Rest assured, God loves them with or without a daily scripture. Clearly, this is an observation you have kept to yourself for a long time. Again, I apologize if everything above seems sharp, but honestly, we could have used more positive light from your direction and reading that was in general upsetting. On that note, we do love you and hope to set up a time where you can meet Hannah Marie in person. She is very excited to meet her family, and we will be reaching out once we feel settled. We love you, and we'll send more pictures soon. Boom. How do we feel about that?
If I could roll my eyes into the back of my head right now, I would.
Yeah.
That was way too much. I'm sorry, but it's like you're playing her game.
Yeah.
You've done exactly what she wanted.
Yeah, it's just hard when with these problems. It's hard when they happen over text like this, because you feel like you have to hit each point of like what they're saying, or else it's just gonna like exist and build resentment or something like that. But then to do that, you have to like do an equally long or longer paragraph to explain yourself, and it's just gonna be a never-ending cycle.
The rest of that can be talked out in person if you even want to, but it's like it just needed to be like a paragraph max, and it needed to be like really disappointed in the way that you've communicated with us right after the birth of your granddaughter. You don't need to take shots at your son like that on what should be one of the most memorable days of his life.
Right.
Again, very disappointed. We'll talk to you about this later.
Yeah, I like that. His mother never replied. Days go by, and I honestly was going to let it go, except that we would never see eye to eye, and she would probably read it and just didn't want to say anything. Well, yesterday, my sister-in-law, who was just as upset by this, shared that his mother was openly complaining about the whole situation and that she admittedly never read my message and she didn't plan to. Now, I'm angry all over again. In all of this, for all she knew, we didn't call her again because maybe my partner's phone died for all she knew. If anything, she could have called us to check on not only myself, but her son. She instead decides to send some more righteous, self-absorbed person messages on top of it and won't even receive a reply to it. We are planning a dinner over there soon, so everyone can meet her. Everyone has been quarantining, by the way, and cases are very low in our state. And I'm going to be completely honest, I don't know how I'm going to conduct myself, let alone get through a whole dinner. I'm so upset, I don't even want her to hold this baby, and I'm mostly talking out of anger. And by the way, we're always over here talking just out of necessity. So you can listen to it on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple Podcasts, or whatever your favorite podcast app is. Just search OK Storytime. You can find full episodes with stories just like this one.
That's right.
So yeah, there's a little bit more to this story, but any final thoughts before we go into it?
You're playing into the game, which you can do, but
yeah.
This was like a surprise. It was an early delivery. Like it was just, they didn't know they were going to be at the hospital. There's all this craziness going on. They didn't even have a go bag. Like it was very chaotic.
Right.
So it's in no way were they intentionally trying to exclude or hurt the mother-in-law, but mother-in-law very much intentionally tried to hurt them.
Yeah.
So
that is true.
Regardless of like, well, maybe they shouldn't have posted on Facebook, they were not the ones being malicious.
Yeah,
you know?
Absolutely not. Yeah, like I don't think that posting is bad at all. But yeah, like even if it was hurt, this is a much bigger reaction than it should be. But there is a little bit more, so let's get on into it. My partner does think that this is stemming from forgetting to call her on Mother's Day for the first effing time ever. Absolutely, he dropped the ball, but who's perfect? And we've literally had the most stressful year in general. But I still don't think that excuses her timing. Yeah, okay. I'd also like to point out that I can't even remember or count on one hand the amount of times that she's reached out to us. It seems to be the other way around. And not once has she ever called me throughout this pregnancy to see how I'm doing. How the heck am I going to move forward and get past my emotional urge to call her out? Or do I not even bother and swallow my pride? And we do have some comments. Should I read those right now, or do you have some comments beforehand?
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I would say about how to go about like moving through life with this person involved in it, just taking away her authority in your head. Because that's the thing that makes it crazy. It's like this, my mother-in-law, but it's like, just look at her as like an annoying kid.
Yeah.
You know? Because that's what she's being right now.
That's true.
She's resulting to 7th grade. She's trying to slam dunk bully her own child.
Right. Commenter number 1 says, just wow. I'm so angered on your behalf. I've gotten some crazy emails from my own parents, but you're right. The narcissism of that during a time that you definitely don't need any added stress, that takes the cake.
Yeah.
Is your partner outraged? All of the self-righteousness regarding religion, the holding his 7th grade self against him, it sounds like she is a toxic force in your life. I would seriously consider cutting her out of your family. She should realize what is at stake when berating you for not telling her immediately the granddaughter's name. Does she not realize that you guys control access to her grandkids? Would he ever consider cutting her out? And hope he responds, I could cry. Thank you for this validation. I was like, #sweaty palms posting this because I feel insecure about the whole situation. I've known this woman for 10 years and not once has she ever lashed out like this. So I felt like I was breaking down a wall doing so. A lot of people have said that I'm overly nice in my response to her, but imagine having no issues with someone on a confrontational level and you suddenly had to rise to the occasion. Interacting with her in general can be eggshells. She's very opinionated. She is very isolated, and a lot of the family on his side aren't extremely close with her from what I understand as a distant outsider. Her daughter, my partner's only sibling, has a very strained relationship with her. His mom is absolutely included in the family, but half the time there's unnecessary tension. I think my partner isn't surprised by it, and while that isn't necessarily outraged, they aren't surprised either. Would I cut her off? That's a loaded question. She has a lot of illnesses, so she kind of gets a free pass to a point. We don't see her a lot. I really was hoping that my message would at least be read, but apparently she gets the final say, and that's that. And that is that for the whole story.
Again, get rid of her authority. You're independent adults. I assume you don't rely on this woman for support or anything. So just start rejecting her sense of authority.
Yeah. If Riley was here, he would say to just call her and just talk instead of having problems over text. Just call.
It's true.
And because yeah, that's exactly what happens. You give them the opportunity to have the last laugh just like that, and or to just not say anything at all. And then it's like, okay, great. Now it's still a problem and nothing has been resolved. Wonderful.